Saucy Not Bossy.
Welcome in, everybody, to Saucy Not Bossy. Today we have Sue McGaughey, who is just a wonderful human being. I have known Sue. How long have we known each other now, Sue?
Since like 2017, maybe?
Look, before
Before.
COVID. So, we have been long friends here
Yeah.
because it's a different world since 2017. But I'm so excited to have you on because you have helped me so much in these last few months because you've been with behavioral. You do a million things, and I want you to introduce yourself to everybody. But for 25 years, you were a behavioral specialist, right? Can you tell everybody more about yourself? Welcome in.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Yes, 25 years in special education in the behavior field. Worked with kids throughout the autism spectrum, Down syndrome, emotional, disorders, the whole gamut. So, I really love it. I love working with the kids, love making a positive change and helping the parents, and lost my job in December because of budget cuts. And so now I'm doing advocacy and in-home behavior. So,
I love it. What got you into helping people, Sue, and especially 25 years ago? I feel like it's not as talked about as it. Am I wrong as it is
no,
now?
you're right. It wasn't as talked about before. So I'm very open about this. I grew up in a very abusive home environment. My dad died when I was like 7 years old. My mom got mixed up with the wrong person. And I always said to myself that when I get older, whatever job I do, it's going to be helping kids who need help but don't know how to ask for it. And I just got into special education.
I love that. I feel like there was something that resonated with me. It's like people ask me why I do what I do, and I feel like the unhealed pieces of me, I try to help and fill that void through helping other people.
Exactly. So you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do in different ways. I still do. Okay, so that's amazing. So my question for you is, they say, let's talk about autism today. I'm very new about this, and you sent me an email just setting the bar of all of these things because I'm having my son got diagnosed around 1.5, 2 years old. At first, I just came up, and this is for all the parents out there. I think you're going to be a great tool to help all the parents out there being like, is there something going on? Because I know there's a lot of parents that I do know, Sue, that don't want to see it. And their child is 5, 6, 7 years old. And I'm like, wait a second, there's early intervention that can help them. A lot of people like to be in denial. So today I'd love to talk to you about what are the signs if you are kind of not understand. Because at first with my son, he was kind of in his own little thing. And, I have twins. And so at first, because my father is hard of hearing, so I thought maybe he just was hard of hearing, or he's just really tired, or, I just didn't know. But then I realized he was in the other room, and the Netflix, the ta-dum comes on, and he would run from the other room to go watch, the ta-dum for the Netflix. So I'm like, that's not what it is. Then he wasn't sleeping at night. So I was like, maybe he's just tired, but he was up, and he still is up all hours.
Right.
So in saying all of that, what would you say to a person? Where do they start? What would help me? Help me try to navigate all of this with what you do.
Well, it's true. No offense to the dads out there, but usually it's the dads that are in more denial than the moms. Because as moms, we're there all the time. We pick up on little things like, are they flapping their hands? How is the eye contact? Are they sensitive to noise or light? Like all these little things, and you start to wonder. My own son didn't really talk a lot until he was 3 years old, and I kept going to the doctor, and they're like, oh, no, he'll talk when he's ready. But later on in life, he had OCD, and I always wondered if he was a little on the spectrum, but he was never diagnosed with that. So, when I was working in special education, we didn't say autism was a disability. We called it a diffability because each kid is unique and has different qualities and uniqueness about them, right? I had a young man was 12 years old, and he wasn't very verbal. He could talk, he just wouldn't. And one day his mom walked past the computer and he was typing paragraphs. And she said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea all that information was in his head." So, each child is different. They're unique, right? Some kids on the spectrum have very high IQs, you know. Um, I just say, look, you'll know. As a mom, you just know that something isn't right. But look for those things like, are they sensitive to light, sound, materials, right? I had another little guy who couldn't write in the classroom unless you put like a towel down under his arm. So, just little things like that. Did you notice that with your son?
It's a great question. He doesn't do the flapping, but he does a lot of, he takes the little toys and then he does the side. But yeah, the shoes, when he gets home from school, he has to change his shoes and he is very particular about things. And now it's always something different,
Mm-hmm.
but I love that differability. Is that what it is?
Melody.
I
Yeah.
love because I've been going through a lot, with my mom living with us and having, Alzheimer's, how she's just, her brain is kind of off, but his is now, it's so engaged and present
Mm-hmm.
that it makes me stay present. So again, like you said, I think it's a beautiful thing. He's just who he is, right?
Right. Well, in years ago, kids weren't diagnosed with autism, right?
What were they
They
diagnosed with? What
they
was it?
weren't. I mean, diagnostic testing nowadays is way more advanced. So you can say on one hand, like, what's going on with the increase in autism, right? But is it that there's an increase, or did we have a lot of children that were undiagnosed early on? See what I'm saying? I can't remember being in school and anyone ever talking about autism, right? Of course, I'm a lot older than you. But
Yeah, my generation either, right?
now, and you might have this, you might have a parent that goes and the pediatrician says, "Oh no, your child's not on the autism spectrum." But you bring them to get diagnosed at school, right? Preschool or whatever. And there's a battery of specialists, school psychologists, everyone. And they go, "Oh yeah, your child qualifies under the autism spectrum," right? So I would tend to trust that more because they're doing all these in-depth tests and early intervention is the key, right? So I think people are being diagnosed more and it's bringing more awareness and it's more of it's more normal these days. There are a lot of children on the spectrum.
They're saying that 1 in 31 children, according to the CDC, has ASD, autism spectrum disorder, and 4 times the amount of boys than girls. Do you have any idea why that is?
No,
That's just wild.
I absolutely don't.
Yeah,
That's an ongoing
yeah.
controversy. Like people blame it on vaccines, they blame it on food, on genetics. Is it, nature versus nurture? Is it the way certain kids are being raised? You know, um, I mean, the research is ongoing on that, right? Um,
Yeah.
it, I mean, we just don't know for sure. We just don't know for sure.
I have so many questions for you. So let me ask you, for everybody out there too, with the spectrum, what does that look like when everyone's like, there's a spectrum? Can you tell us what is a spectrum of sorts?
Well, like there's Asperger's disorder, right? And with Asperger's, the child might be very verbal, very smart, but they have the sensory component, right? Like Temple Braden, right? Have you heard of her? And she wrote
No.
books and she did speaking engagements and everything. Um, they grow into very, you know, functional adults, right? Then there's the other part of the spectrum where kids are nonverbal and they get physically aggressive because, it's most of that I believe, and this is just my opinion, but I believe the aggression comes from frustration because of communication, right? And they don't know or understand what's happening to them, why they can't communicate. And so then, there are parents that have to deal with that, work with that. I like to say work with that, not deal with it, because it's not, you know. Um, and so with those kids, you need like picture icons and, they need discrete trial training all kinds of training. But with all of the kids on the spectrum and kids in general, we have to teach them what they need to know. Like they're not just magically going to know, right? So if there's a kid with a behavior issue, we have to figure out what's triggering that behavior and then come up with a plan to teach them a more socially appropriate replacement behavior. Make sense?
It does. So give me an example, will you?
Okay. So so say a student doesn't like to write in class. I'll use a kindergartner, right? Just starting out, hate writing, and it's a sensory issue. But the teacher doesn't know that yet because nobody's tested him for OT or, to see what the problem is. So they might automatically assume, oh, he's just having a tantrum. He's just having a behavior. Every time I put his work on the desk, he just throws it off the desk, right? Somehow they have to get a behaviorist involved and you have to take data and you have to look at what is causing him really to throw that work off his desk. Is it because he just doesn't want to do it or it doesn't feel right to him? See what I'm saying? So that's where data and observation is super important. And I always advocate for that with the kids. You have to know what the trigger is, what's causing the actual behavior, right? You might find, like I said earlier, if you put down a little cloth or something that makes his arm feel better on the desk, he'll have no problem writing. Maybe it's a physical problem where the grip on the pencil irritates them, right? It could be all these subtle little things, but unless you do the research and you do the data and observation, then you don't really know what the trigger is or how to actually treat it, right? I had a lot of kiddos that in the TKK class that would literally tear up the class, throw chairs, dump tables, just throw all the toys, the class has to evacuate. And I would get very frustrated because, to be honest, some staff would say, that kid's just being a brat. No, that kid is not being a brat. Something's bothering him. Let's figure out what's bothering him so we can teach him the right way to do things.
So you evacuate the class, teach the right way to do things, and then how do you figure that out? Do you separate the child? Like, how does that
Well, you look
come
for
to fruition?
patterns. So you start with data like how frequent are these things happening? How frequent are these outbursts happening? What's happening just before the outburst? What happens during and what happens after? So it's called the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. And people think consequence means like punishment, but consequence in the behavior world is just what happens immediately after the behavior. It could be like, how did the staff respond? And then how did the student respond as a result of that? So it really, you have to spend a couple weeks, or maybe a month even, taking data and looking at what's really going on with the student or the child to be able to help them, to look for the patterns. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, did you run a class, like what was, as a behavioral specialist, what did you do? Did you go into people's homes? Like, how did it work with you?
Now, mine was all in the classroom. So what would happen is I worked on a behavior team. We had a BCBA, behavior certified board analyst, and then the rest of us were under that. And we would go in. So kids would get referred to us. So we had a caseload. I think the ones I worked on, we had like 30 kids. And then we would go in, meet with the staff, find out what's happening, observe the student, and see what the behaviors are. And sometimes the behaviors the staff reports, we never see them, and we'll say, well, we're not seeing that behavior. And they'll say, well, it happens at this time. So then, you adjust your schedule and go in. Sometimes I go spend the whole day to see. And then I would go in and work with the student myself with ideas from my toolbox in my head of all the years of experience and figure out, let's try this, let's try that, let's try a picture schedule, let's try, visuals paired with, verbal commands, let's try reinforcers. Positive reinforcement is so important because people spend a lot of time telling the student what not to do instead of what to do. There was a lady at my pool yesterday, and she's yelling at her son, stop running, stop running, stop running. And I said, hey, try walking. Let's walk. And he slowed right down and walked. Right. And she's like, oh, yeah, I should have said it that way. So just rephrasing things and focusing on the things they're doing correctly. If the student's sitting there doing their work properly, hey, I like the way you're writing that. I like the way you're doing your math. Be specific with the praise instead of spending the time saying, you need to stop that, knock it up, the general negative terms that people just automatically use. So we would go in and form a plan. It's called a behavior intervention plan, based off the data and observations and working with the student. And then you go in and you work with the student and you train the staff. And then it's kind of like rotation, upkeep to make sure the staff is implementing the plan with fidelity. Because a lot of times, teachers are overworked, stressed out. If they have 15 kids in a special day class, for example, and they have 2 or 3 kids with behavior issues that are disrupting the class all day long, they tend to get frustrated and they stop following the plan. But reality is we need the staffing in there. Some kids need the added support, but we need the consistency and the patience. And that's what makes the difference. And the kid has to trust you. You have to have mutual
Yeah.
trust and respect.
Yeah. Now, what do you say to parents that, because this is hard. This is really hard. And then I start talking to parents whose kids are on this, but everyone's different. This is what I want to ask you too. My son is not like everybody else. Like this, he is who he is, right? And I just feel like people go on these blogs and they're like, well, my child's then not going to talk and he's going to be in a corner all day and he's going to be on the low sense. But, every day is a different day. So what would you say to parents, that have a child on the spectrum, are frustrated, are worried? Would you say, hey, go day by day?
Day by day, seek support. Make sure you have support. You have to take care of yourself so you can take care of your child. And according to where the child is on the spectrum, it is more difficult when you have a big kid like a 10-year-old who's physically aggressive and hitting all the time. You need to utilize every single source you can, like regional centers, in-home behavior services, as well as the school. You have to advocate at school for your child to make sure things are getting done correctly and, persistently to help decrease those behaviors and teach them, the right way to do things. It is difficult. Parents need support. And like you said before, some people are in denial. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Everybody's unique. We all have our things. I like to say we're all a little autistic. I have my little OCD things I like to do. Just don't give up. You have to have patience. Take a breath. If you need to step away for a bit, do it, but don't give up because somewhere inside your child, there's, that uniqueness and you just have to pull it out of them, right? A lot of kids on the spectrum are so good with art and, just different things. Find what your child's strength is, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even after high school, there's young adult programs and, job training programs for kids. It is more difficult with the nonverbal, right? It's true. That is very, very difficult. And you need a wide support system for that. And again, it's all
And when sorry to interrupt, but when you say that, I'm trying to remember what I went to because I felt as though there was something going on. He wasn't in school yet. So then I started researching. I don't even know how I got there, but tri-counties, is that like a regional center,
right.
right? Would you say to a person contact, and can you explain more about what a regional, like, okay, let's just say the person listening right now, like where I was, because I'm so in it and I forgot where it
Yeah.
started with Captus, but I think I just called a regional center and said help. I think he was like a year and a half. Is that what people do
And talk to your
to start?
pediatrician first, and they can also give you resources. I would start with the pediatrician and make sure at home make a list of the things that you're seeing. Like, this is what has me concerned. Sometimes, if Cash got diagnosed at an early age, so that's great. And is he in school now?
He is. He's going into TK, and he's going 30% with the high sensory kids, and then he's got his 70%. But Sue, I had to fight for this. Like, it's amazing where I live, and I feel bad for people that live in really big
Mhm.
cities because I don't know if they have the funding in some of these cities. Because if I was living in Los Angeles still, I maybe there's some great programs. I would worry more kids in a classroom, less help. And I just feel in these parents too, they working 2, 3 jobs. Maybe it's single parents at home and they don't even know where to start. I like get goosebumps thinking about it because your child, no matter if they have a, if they're on the spectrum, if they're not, if there's something going on, every child needs special attention,
Mhm.
right? For who they are. And it's just, I feel like there's not enough parents able to give that support. So that's why I think this conversation is so great to say, hey, if you don't want to see it, if you've got a million other things going on, where do you start? And the pediatrician, I think, is a great, and I think that's where I
And not to
started.
get
Yeah.
political, but start calling the governor's office every single day, leave messages because our schools are in a crisis right now. And the district I was working in, $38 million deficit. Hundreds of staff just lost their job. Next fall, the classrooms are going to have larger class size and less staff. And there's no money. Where'd all that money go, right? I mean, where did all that money go? And you're right. I mean, and goes back to what I was saying, how staff gets burned out and they're tired and they want to do the best for the kid and they're trying to, but they just don't have the resources sometimes. My son works in special education and he'll call me at the end of the day and he'll say, "Oh my God, Mom, I'm so tired." And he'll tell me how the little guys were, "Oh, you're so active today, climbing over the desk, running around, not wanting to do his work." But he's like me. He doesn't give up. He keeps going. He's trying to become a teacher right now, but it's short staff. They don't have the staff, and so they source out. And so then they spend money on agencies to send in behavior checks, but they could be spending that money to fill the classrooms with staff from the school. I mean, there's just so much, so much. But I say, we have to advocate for our kids, and it starts at the state level. You know,
Okay. So call the governor's office and congressman. How about
regardless.
call your local? Yeah. What are they doing? Like, call them. I'm like, I was surprised actually. I've called the congressman a time or two and they've really showed up. I was like, let's use that. That's a great source
Yeah,
too.
we need to fight for our kids.
We do. And again, like I've been dealing with a lot in the last few years, and I think I've been advocating for my son. However, now I'm looking at it and going, should I have done more? And there's that mom guilt, right? Of like, should I have gone earlier? Should I have done more? But I also tell people, do what you
Right,
can, but show up every day and really pay attention. And like you said, write everything down. Really know because they ask you a lot of
right,
questions. Okay, so then you go to the regional center, and what I'm dealing with right now at the regional is they helped me with a lot of things, but asking the questions, it was huge for me because I didn't know that he could go and get some equine therapy and then swimming as well. Like swimming classes here are $70 for a half
yeah,
hour.
crazy.
And my son barely wants to get in the pool, but I'm like, he needs that to survive if we're around a pool. That's my biggest fear on the planet,
Yeah,
right? But Tri Counties, where I have it here, is they were like, we'll subsidize that cost for you. But I didn't even know until I said, what can you help me
right,
with? Because there are a lot of, I want to tell parents out there, unlike you, who I can't even believe there's budget cuts and you're such a pro. There are a lot of people not having, they don't have their own children. They've never been through this. They're
mhm,
6 months in to knowing about, Tri Counties and all of that, and they don't even know. So I'm like teaching them a lot of things, so with parents, really ask the questions, the Tri County, because I've learned nobody knows more than I do about my son,
right. That's right.
right? Yeah. But at the same time, that's why I'd love to talk to you because a lot of people out there will say no. Like, I got him this device because he's 4 now and he still can't
Yeah,
talk. I called 2 different sources and they were like, it's going to take a year and a half to get one of those iPad devices. And I was like, are you kidding me? So Sue, I just kept calling different
yeah,
places. I got one in literally a
There you
month and a
go. See,
half.
and that's what you have to do. Is
Yeah,
he not talking at all? Like he's saying any words?
he does. Like he
Excuse
mimics.
me.
He knows ABC, but like you said, Sue, then he'll do things where it's like the numeral, the numeral numbers on the clock. He'll go 12, 1, 2, and I'm like, how do you know that? Or like there's certain things where he'll do January, February, like out of nowhere, just like looking at the calendar. And I'm like, I don't even think my daughter knows half of that, and they're twins. And it's amazing when he does talk what he
They're
knows,
probably doing that
you
in
know?
school now, the days of the week and the months of the year and all that. But yeah, see what I'm saying? They do retain a lot of information. Are they using a picture schedule with him at school? Like, are they pairing pictures with verbal commands and
Yes. And then also, will you tell everyone your method to the first and then as
right?
right? The first, yeah. Can you explain that? Because beside the pictures, just
Yeah.
tell people that email was amazing. If you could just tell me more what
So
was
we
in that
use the
email.
first then method where, because a lot of times when we talk to kids, it's like the old Charlie Brown cartoons where the thing is going wah wah wah, right? And they just don't. It's too many words. Too many words. And so we want to keep the commands simple. So we use cards that say first then, and then be like, okay, first, first sit in your chair, then you get a star, right? First write your name, then you get, a sticker. Whatever the reward system is that you have set up, reward systems work. You just have to stick with them. Some kids love getting stars, stickers, all that stuff, right? It just depends on what they like. I had a little guy that loves Spider-Man, so I made Spider-Man icons, and every time he did something correctly, I'd give him the Spider-Man icon, and he'd get all excited. So they can maybe earn 5 icons and then get, 5 minutes of iPad or something. You can be inventive with that. But stick with, first this, then that. First take your shoes off, then you can have your snack. If you keep it simple, right, then it's easier for them to follow the commands. And then after they do it, yay, thanks for taking your shoes off. That was great. I think sometimes as adults we talk too much, and the kids it goes right over their head, right? So especially with the little ones, it's so much easier. Even when you're training, like we were talking about potty training, you and I, you know, first take your pants down, then do then sit down. You can tell them the steps, and you can also make like a little social story so that you can point to it. Look, first do this, then do that, right? And then you reward them for doing it correctly. And let me
That's
just
great.
make it clear because people hear the word reward and they're like, oh, you're bribing the kid. No, you're encouraging the child and praising them for doing things correctly. That's what it is. You're shaping the behavior that you want them to have.
There
So,
you go.
first
Yes.
line cards, I love it.
I love and then okay, so when it comes to potty training, right? A lot whether it's a kid not on the spectrum or, on the spectrum, would you say try the method that you just said and, reward them, reward whatever,
Yeah.
give them things that they like sitting on the potty, but would you say, try like 2 days and if they're not getting it at all, to just give it up? Or what would you say to that? There's so many theories out there, Sue, so I
My
love
little
hearing.
granddaughter, she's 3, but she wanted to go to school when she was 2. And my daughter was trying potty training. She just put the potty right out in the kitchen, living room, wherever, and showed her this is where you go. And then they'd run in the bathroom and dump it, whatever. And she'd fade it until it got into the bathroom to do it. But Ellie, her name's Ellie, when she wanted to go to school, she just said, okay, mommy, I'm going potty. And she wanted underwear and that was it. So with some kids it just clicks, right? Don't give up. Just keep at it. They want that. They just don't know how to, get to the point where they need to be.
So with my son, I wonder if I should start. I know you gave me a lot of tips, but if I can tell that he just doesn't get it at all, they're trying it at school, but if he doesn't get it at all within it, like keep him naked. And if he doesn't get it, do I just put pause on it, or do we just keep continuing? Because I see some parents that are like, forget it, I'm just going to put the diaper back
No.
on. And then some people are like, don't ever put the
Right.
diaper
Keep
back on.
going. Keep at it. If he's not interested, like I said, try social stories where you can make them yourselves. Um, Actually, I have one I'll send you. But and you can make it fun, like a little bedtime story about the little boy who goes pee pee in the potty, right? I mean, you can do things like that. Just don't give up. And, you have to find what motivates him. What motivates him to go. You know. And yeah, if you're comfortable around the house with, let that potty chair sit wherever. And when you know, or if you have an idea of what times of the day he likes to go to the bathroom or he usually goes, keep a chart on that, and then take him in and try to get him to go then.
I love that. Let me ask you, with the meltdowns, with the particular parts of being on a spectrum and just not being able to communicate, a lot of kids, I see some parents, and I've been guilty of it too, I'll be honest, of I get heightened because I'm like, and I have to bring myself back down and go, okay,
Right.
it's like, this is not about me, right? But I see a lot of parents that stay heightened and they don't know what to do. What would you say in that moment when there's just epic meltdown? And then people care, Sue. People give a fuck. Sorry
Yeah.
to cuss, but like, people give a fuck what people think at stores and what I'm like, I don't care. Like, I just be y'all do what you need to. And if you haven't had kids or if you don't know what this
Right.
is, stay out of it. They're like, oh, I'm getting looks. I'm like, I don't care what looks I get, right? I'm just trying to keep my son alive and, escort him out of a store if necessary. But what would you say in that moment of just pure chaos? Like, what have you done? Like,
Well, I mean,
in
you
your
have to stay calm. Listen, I had a student who bit me so hard it bit through my skin and had an open wound, and I did not freak out. And the staff was like, "How could you not freak out?" And I said, "Because if I freak out, he's going to freak out worse, right?" I'll never forget because the little guy, kindergartner, looked at me and he said, "No blood." And I said, "Let's see about that." And I took my jacket off and blood, and he was like, "Oh." He never bit again, ever. He never bit again. But you just have to stay calm. It's hard, I know. Take those breaths. And the less people intervening, the better. So if it's you and your son and your husband, that's it. Tell the other people to move on. Because people will either say something nasty or they'll come in and try to be like, oh, come on, bud, interfere. Thank you, but no thank you. I got this, right? And the same with that school. If there are too many staff responding to one meltdown, it's just stimulating the child more. You need to calm them down, right? And a lot of times you withdraw attention, make sure they're safe in their environment, and, give them a direction, give them a prompt, and then withdraw your eye contact, look away, you keep them in your peripheral vision for safety. But sometimes they just need to be left alone and let them cry it out, right? They
mm,
could be tired, hungry, stomach hurts, we don't know. So sometimes I would just wait it out. And then when they're quiet, I like how you're quiet. Thank you, And I'll model the voice. I like how you're quiet. Like I'll say it soft and quiet. Because if I'm like, oh yeah, good job, you're quiet now, and I'm yelling it, right? They're revving up again. So we as adults have to model the behavior that we want the child to do. Make sense?
oh, it makes all sense. Yeah, with every child, period. My mom always used to say it's never fair to raise a kid that no one's gonna like.
Right.
And that starts with us, right? So I see all these kids, I'm like, you're not an asshole because you're just an asshole. Like you're are just not helping this situation at all, right? Have you ever met a kid where you just thought, uh, I don't know where this child's gonna go, moving forward, but their parents like did so much to help? Like, does that really help? Because I think it does, but you're the expert. Does that really make a difference in the child of how they're going to, you know,
Yes, it makes a
you know,
difference. The more active the parents are, the better. And you have to advocate for your kid. And, it gets irritating at school sometimes when parents are constantly asking questions, but I say, ask all the questions you want. Keep at it, keep advocating for your child, even with our health system, right? And you have to advocate, advocate, advocate for your kid. And there are non-public schools, and some kids do have so much aggression and just can't seem to get the accommodations they need in the public school. So sometimes they will be a candidate to go to non-public schools, and that's where they have smaller settings, more staff per student ratio. And but for me, I would always be like, that's a last resort for me. I would not give up on those kids. And anyone who worked with me knew it. I'd be like, no, no, I love the staff, but you could be doing this better. You're not doing this consistently. I would exhaust every resource to help that child first before shipping them off to a non-public school.
If you can talk about that for a second, because I'm at the place where I get very emotional about it because my son's going into TK, right? And his IEP is individual
Right.
education plan for people that don't know. I had to really, the funny thing is people are like, you have to fight. And I'm like, I didn't have to because these teachers up here are phenomenal and they had a plan. So I was so worried that they were going to put him with kids that were verbal, that were just, very different than what he is right now. But they did, again, like I said, put him with, kids that are similar to him right now. And then I don't know the verbiage with any of it, Sue. I just know where my kid's at. It's so weird because people are like, you're supposed to say this and this. And I'm like, okay, I know he's on the spectrum, but I don't like to label him. I feel like everyone wants to label everything now. When I grew up, I don't know about you, I didn't label anything. I was like, don't put labels on me.
Exactly.
Just let me be.
Exactly.
Right. And now everybody wants a label. But in saying that, he's going to go to this school. And then I worry what happens if he's not, like you were saying, these special schools. What happens if he's not verbal by the time he ages out of TK into kindergarten? And then he has to go with do you send him to the rest of the kids, or what is this special school? Is this a school for special needs kids? So what would you say to send him with kids in an aid or the special school? Yeah, please. I have so many questions.
So,
Sorry.
how did he qualify for? Is he in special education class? Is he in an SDC class, or is he in a gen ed with support?
Yes, STC
Okay.
class right now with 30%, but he has an aid for 2
So you'll
kids.
find there'll be a lot of kids along the way that are nonverbal. And but he is somewhat verbal because you said he's got the echolalia, or the where he's repeating months and numbers. It may emerge. Is he getting speech services at school?
Yes, and I'm doing independent. We're in, yeah, yeah.
Actually, being around verbal kids is probably a good thing because then he might learn to model through them, right? But there are a lot of kids that are very successful in school and they have their little iPads and their little communication boards and stuff. And, then they function just fine. They play with the other kids just fine. They just go about communicating differently. But in your son's case, the way you're explaining it, and he's already having some words, you'll probably see some progression, right? But it will be important that well, certain speech therapists think differently. So some may think the pictures would be the picture schedule might be a detriment, and others will think that yes, it's important. I think it's important, especially when a kid's having a meltdown or something, and you have like an icon that shows, quiet voice, or, calm body, or something like that. Instead of talking, talking, talking and escalating it, you can just show them the card and train them on when you see the card, that's when you take a breath. There are all kinds of strategies you can do. But, it's not that it's a special school or special class. It's, matter of fact, I hate that name, special day class, right? Because, like I said, every kid is unique and they're all special. Um, I think just keep on the track you're going. Speech therapy is very important. Coordinate so that you're doing similar things at home to have that consistency for him. And I think you'll probably see him blossom some. And if not, if he doesn't ever become very verbal, it's not the end of the world. He's got a very strong supportive system. I can tell, you're an amazing mom, and look how you are with your own mom. And, you're like an angel, and I've seen your post with Chris, and he seems like an amazing dad. And so that's half the battle right there, having a supportive family.
Wait. Well, Okay, then I've got one more question. And I love talking to you because it is really sad that I don't have a mom anymore to ask
Right.
questions to and talk to. And I feel for a lot of women out there that never had a mom or didn't like their mom. And it's just, yeah, it's what it is. And, you saying with your background, it's like that's why you became, I feel
Yeah.
like, such a inspiration and nurturer for so many people. So thank you. Um, what do you say? Arlo is my
Right.
daughter, and she's Cassius's twin. So with people that have children that are on the spectrum and then not on the spectrum, I believe, and you tell me, I believe it's really important for me to have my own relationship with Arlo and that we don't always have to do stuff as a family because Cassius some of the times wouldn't enjoy right now, going to a movie or going to different things. What would you say? But a lot of people are like, nope, do it all as a family together all the time.
No, I
What would
think
you
you're
say?
right. You have to have your own time, and Arlo needs her mommy time, and Cash needs his mommy time, and then sometimes there's family time. I think it's perfectly normal. You have to do that, you know. And it's good for Arlo because she's progressing at a different rate, in a different level, in a different way. So she needs different environmental stimulation than he does. So it's not a bad thing, and don't let people make you feel bad about that. And again, I hope I don't, piss anyone off with this stuff. But no, I think it's important. You need that. You need that.
Okay, who are you gonna piss off? No, what pisses me off is all these parents that, only advocate for the one
Right.
child. And then now, 10, 15 years later, they've got, 17, 18-year-old kids that feel like they were not even they weren't even paid attention to at all. And now they've got the anger
Right.
issues. And then they're just like, I don't understand why. And I'm like, because you had two, three kids and every one of them is
Listen,
different and needed individual attention, you know?
my granddaughter, Arlo might like this. My granddaughter, I told you she's 3. She loves to pretend to be at a spa. So to have my daughter make little cucumber things for her eyes, and she likes to soak her little feet and paint her nails. And so her birthday's coming up, and I'm like, gee, what can we do for Ellie's birthday? And she's like, think where they live in Idaho, and she said they have little spas for kids 8 and under. So they're gonna have a little spa day. Arlo might like something like that.
Sure. I think I'd like something like that. I think I need to go and
Yeah.
do that as well.
One thing
Yeah.
that's important,
No,
and you, Chris, need your own time too. Don't be afraid to leave. I know it's hard with your mom, but don't be afraid to leave them with a babysitter once in a while. You have to have
yeah,
your time too for you and your husband. Because self care
yeah.
is important. You have to have that self care. You
You're
know.
right. It's really hard, but yeah. And then, my husband gets worried because he can't talk yet, my son. So because we were just, and anybody can have their opinion about it. We just didn't want to put our kids in school if they couldn't talk at all because there's just weird things that can
Right. Right.
happen
Right.
outside. But, now we're starting to balance it. We know the teachers and yeah, but you're right. We really do. We need to check in with each other. And I just feel like Sue, like, between the brain is such a fascinating thing. Between my son, it's like his is growing, and then my mom is like, deteriorating. And it's fascinating how we're born. We don't have much life to live here. We have to really appreciate every day, because when you're gone, whether mentally, physically, you're gone.
Right.
Like it's,
Right.
so
I listen to Jay
she said,
Shetty a lot, and
oh yeah,
I can't remember exactly, but he said in his relationship, there's like they do like a daily check-in, a weekly check-in, and then he always asks his wife, "What could I do to help make our relationship better?" And then vice versa. And I think that's so important, especially when you have children that have present challenges for you. Um, it's important. You have to take care of yourself too.
I heard a statistic that 80% of couples get divorced from having a child on the spectrum.
Yeah.
80%. I don't know if it's just because of
You
that, but what you just said is checking in with
have to check
yourself,
in.
each other. Yeah. And not feeling heightened. Cause he'll say, I'll just be heightened from
Yeah.
anxiety, from, passion, just having it, internalizing all of it because I don't want to put it out on
Right.
him, but then it comes out in different ways. So again, like taking walks, doing things for yourself, the respite of sorts,
Yeah, even having a glass of wine when the kids go to bed.
girl. Yes, yes. Watching my bad shows. My husband's like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's not my drama. I don't care. I'll just leave it once I turn the TV off. It's entertaining. Goodbye."
I mean,
So
I admit, I watch mindless. I'm hooked on 90 Day Fiance, and because I like to evaluate the behaviors.
love it. Cut from the same cloth. I love
No,
it. Me too. I
but
love it.
it's so
Oh,
important. But you know what? It sounds like you're on the right track with Cash, and just keep advocating. And I know I called my Congress and my governor all the time and write letters and everything. You know,
okay.
I even send them
I
to the
love it.
White House. Like, what are you going to do about this? You know, um, I mean, we just don't know. We don't know what is causing autism. We may never know. Just like tinnitus. I have tinnitus. They don't know what causes it. They can only guess. You know. Um,
Yeah. So what before we wrap, because I could talk to you
yeah,
forever.
you can call
I
me
am
anytime.
forever. You're the best. And I can't wait for people to have questions. Then if you want to come back on. But what do you do now with your next chapter of your life? What are you up to?
Well, a couple of things. I've been a writer forever. I love to write. That started when I was like 10 years old. I'm writing a book about tinnitus, living with tinnitus, the holistic approach, and that should be coming out probably by the end of July. And with that, I've already started doing like support groups and helping other people. I got a ton. I never thought I'd be a TikToker, but I've started a TikTok just about tinnitus. And so I have a lot of women reach out to me. And so I want to help in that avenue. I'm also going to continue to advocate for kids and do in-home behavior services, working on a children's book. It's a compilation of social stories for kids with special needs. So spend a lot of time writing and doing my artsy side.
So important too to have that outlet. I think also too with people, everybody out there, have an outlet of something creative, whether it's like if karate's creative to you or writing, anything that's just, not in your brain all day, if just you can share with the world creativity. That's huge. So will you let us know when that's
I
coming
will.
out and then we can share that? I could be your
I
first
will.
fan book. That's amazing.
Thank
Congratulations.
you. This was fun.
Yeah.
And listen, call me anytime if you have questions about
Well,
cash.
you're the best. And thank you. And then we're gonna probably have a million questions. So I'll put all the links to
Okay.
you and I would just love for everybody to get to know you better
Aw,
because
thanks.
you're one.
You are
So
too.
thank
And say hi to your
you.
mom and
Oh,
your family.
I will.
Okay.
All right. And God bless yours too. All right. Bye, beauty.
Bye.
Thank